Hello to you. I do hope you're well. Welcome to this AQA A-Level Religious Studies revision video. I'm Ben Wardle, and today we are looking at how to structure your essays in the exam. So we're going to be taking a look at how to structure your 10-mark answers and your 15-mark answers in order to secure the top marks and secure that A-star grade. So I've been taking a look at the exemplar answers from AQA. I've had a look at their mark schemes and the examiner's report as well. And I've put together what I hope will be a really helpful guide to structuring your answers. Because of course, with this A-level, it's not just about knowing your key content, knowing your key scholars, and knowing your key evaluation points, is it? It is all about knowing how to present them in your essay as well. It is so important that we are perfecting our essay technique and that we feel really confident structuring our essays when we go into the exam room. So I hope this video will help to give you a bit of insight and a bit of inspiration when it comes to writing your 10-mark answers and your 15-mark answers. So I thought we could start with the 10-mark question, which is, of course, the AO1 question, where you're being assessed on your knowledge and understanding. And that is really important to remember. When you're writing your 10 markers, do not start giving me the strengths and the weaknesses. You know, don't be bringing in evaluation. It's all about presenting the facts. It's all about presenting the key core knowledge about the topic in the question. However, also really important to remember, you must keep your answer relevant to the question that has been set. You know, it's very easy, isn't it, to see one word or one phrase in the question and then just write down everything you know about that topic. So, for example, if the question is on religious experiences or religious language, you know, it's very easy to see that phrase and then just write down everything you know about that topic. You have to be selective in terms of the material you include. Everything you include needs to be relevant to the particular question that has been set. And I'm going to show you how to guarantee that in just a moment's time. But yes, I want to start with the, what's this called? I forgot what it's called. The mark scheme. That's it. Do excuse me. I think I need some green tea. Honestly, guys, I've not even got started. Do you know what I mean? Brace yourselves. Anyway, so the mark scheme, as you can see here, now that I know what it is, breaks down your essay into 5 levels. So the examiner, when they read your essay, will make a decision which of these levels it deserves, basically. And of course, we are aiming for a level 5. We want to be getting 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. And in order to do that, we need to have shown that our knowledge and critical understanding is accurate, relevant, and fully developed. So all that is saying is what you write has got to be right. Yeah, you can't be saying that, you know, Plato loved TikTok because, you know, he existed over 2,000 years before social media was invented. It's got to be relevant. So it's got to be relevant to the question. And that's why I say don't just write down everything you know. Make sure that what you're writing links to the question. And it's got to be fully developed. We want to see explanations. We want to see evidence. You know, do not just give me a surface level insight. Make sure you are giving me depth. Make sure you are going into detail. These AO1 questions are all about showing off that detail, showing the examiner that you fully understand the topic, that you fully understand what is being asked. What else do we need to see in there then? We might want to see textual or scriptural references where appropriate, especially on paper 2 when you're talking about religion. Make sure you're referring to the Bible, for example. Where appropriate, good knowledge and understanding of the diversity of views needs to be demonstrated. So, you know, you're going to have more than one paragraph is basically what that's saying. I would be suggesting for your 10 marker that you write 3 detailed paragraphs. And then there needs to be clear and coherent presentation of ideas. So that's why structure is so important, with precise use of the appropriate subject vocabulary. So make sure you know your keywords, your tier 3 vocabulary, as you might call them, and make sure you're spelling them correctly and that you're using them correctly. So let's have a look at how this might look in terms of your responses in the exam. So this is the exemplar from AQA. This was a 10 out of 10 example that they provided us with. And the question set was to examine, remember AO1 questions always say examine, it says to examine different understandings of religious experience. So, you know, really important to note that phrase, different understandings. And that's where you're going to show different key ideas, basically, because there is not just one way of understanding religious experiences, is there? There are different ways, and this essay really illustrates how to explore them with depth, with detail, and to an A-star standard. So let's just have a look at what they've done. When I look at this answer, I can see 3 clear paragraphs, and each paragraph talks about a different key idea. Paragraph 1 talks about the understanding of religious experiences as visions. Paragraph 2 talks about mystical experiences as another understanding of religious experiences. And then paragraph 3 talks about numinous experiences as a third way of understanding religious experiences. And this, I think, provides us with the blueprint for our 10 markers. I want you in your 10 markers to give me 3 solid, detailed paragraphs which each explore a key idea. And we're going to say a key idea because each paragraph, as you can see here, explores in detail a key idea about the question. So this question wants me to give different understandings of religious experiences. And obviously, whoever wrote this essay has planned that in each of their 3 paragraphs, they will explore one different understanding. And so each paragraph is really clear, it's really detailed, it's supported with examples, it's supported with the names of scholars, and it provides me, doesn't it, with a really clear, really strong response to the questions there. I read that essay and I think, yeah, they have examined different understandings of religious experience. Give them a tick, give them an A-star. So this is a brilliant example of how to structure your 10 marker in 3 clear paragraphs, each paragraph exploring a different key idea. So as I say, that first paragraph explores the key idea that one understanding of religious experience is the idea of visions. And they go into detail, they give me examples, they give me depth, they tell me, they really explain to me this idea of visions. In that second paragraph, then, they explore the key idea of mystical experiences. They refer to one of the scholars that we've studied, to Walter Staith, to give their answer credibility. They also refer to William James. Excellent to see 2 scholars in 1 paragraph, really grounding their writing in authoritative voices. And again, there is a lot of detail there, isn't there? There's a lot of depth in their explanations, showing me, and showing the examiner, of course, that they know what they're talking about. And then that third and final paragraph explores the key idea of a third understanding, which is numinous experiences. And you can see Rudolf Otto's name there. And again, you can see detail, you can see reference to one of his texts where they quote him saying that they are mysterium tremendum et fascinans. And, when you then take a step back and look at that answer as a whole, you can see they have got 3 clear key ideas which are explained in detail, which have examples and which have evidence in the form of scholars. And so based on that, here is my structure for a 10-mark question. Your first paragraph, by the way, really important to note, there was no introduction there, was there? They're not wasting time on an introduction. They're diving in straight away with their first key idea. The paragraph 1 is going to be key idea 1. So you are going to pick the first key idea that your first paragraph will be about in response to the question. And so they then name and explain that first key idea. You might use a scholar. I would always recommend including a scholar in every paragraph, and you might then give examples. So they use St. Bernadette, for example, as an example there. You then move on to your second paragraph where you unpack key idea 2. So you name and explain that second key idea related to the question. You will want to include a scholar here, and you might also want to include examples to add further explanation. And then your third and final paragraph is your third and final key idea. So you're going to name and explain that one again, using a scholar's name, using maybe a reference to one of their books, and examples again, if you think that would help to explain that key idea. But what I want you to do with your 10 markers is to think, right, in response to every question, I am going to think of 3 key ideas that I want to explain to my examiner. And I'm going to do that by using references to scholars. I might use reference to scripture, and I'm going to use examples. And I think if you can cover 3 ideas with depth and with evidence to support, you will fulfill the requirements of level 5, where they want to see the breadth and depth, because covering 3 different ideas shows breadth, doesn't it? And then giving that detailed explanation in each paragraph shows depth. And so if you can do that in the exam, I think that you are going to be securing those top marks, as long, of course, as the content that you're writing is relevant and, of course, is accurate as well. So that's a quick look at your 10-mark question, where we're showcasing our knowledge and our expertise in response to the question. And remember, make sure you stay fully focused on the question. So, as part of your revision, I would be thinking for each topic that you study, if I got a 10 marker on this, what would my key ideas be? How would I show my examiner I have expertise on this topic? So there's our 10 marker guide. I want to move on now to the 15-mark question, the AO2 evaluation question, which is when we are evaluating a statement. Now, this is where the critical analysis kicks in. And you can see here that in order to secure a level 5 to get 13, 14 or 15 out of 15 and secure that A star, we need to present a very well-focused response to the issue raised. So every single paragraph that you write for your 15 marker, and indeed for your 10 marker as well, needs to be relevant. It needs to be linked back to the question. You always need to link it back to the question so that the examiner is confident you've written a very well-focused response. It needs to include perceptive discussion of different views, including, where appropriate, those of scholars or schools of thought with critical analysis. And I'm going to show you what that might look like in just a moment. There is an appropriate evaluation, fully supported by the reasoning. And, that's why it's so important to write a justified conclusion at the end. You need to show that you've got evaluation supported by reasoning, that it is justified, and you've not just come to this decision because you flipped a coin, and that there is precise use, again, of the appropriate subject vocabulary. So you are using the key terms and you are spelling them correctly and you're using them correctly. So what does this look like in practice? Here is, again, an exemplar answer from AQA. So they gave this answer 15 out of 15. And you will notice that, maybe you do this anyway, but you will notice that actually you do not need to write pages and pages in order to get 15 out of 15. What is really important is your structure, and what is really important is the quality of your writing. Just writing pages and pages of strengths and weaknesses is not necessarily going to get you, above a band 3, a level 3, excuse me. So in order to secure those top marks, it is really important you are planning before you just start writing everything you can think of, so that we are focusing on quality and therefore we are achieving that A star grade. So let me show you. In this answer, we've got a few key things that I think are key for securing those top marks. The first thing is a thesis statement. Now, a thesis statement is where you set out at the start of your essay what your essay will conclude. And so here's the example we've got. I strongly disagree with the statement that Griffin's process theodicy solves the problem of evil, and argue that it fails to do so. So from the moment you have begun reading this person's essay, you are so clear and you feel so confident in terms of where the essay will end. You know what they're going to conclude. And the thesis statement really sets the tone for your essay. It shows your examiner that you're going to be evaluating and you're going to be thinking critically. And it shows them, as I say, from the very first line, that you are fully focused on evaluating the statement, that you are fully focused on the particular question, and that you're going to be evaluating it. Now, there is a risk with writing a thesis statement that you then end up writing a very one-sided argument, which will not get you any higher than a level 2, because if you start an answer by saying, I strongly disagree with the statement, you could easily then just write an entire essay where you are disagreeing with the statement. You must not do that. Remember, you have to give both sides of the argument. But you will notice this essay still manages to give both sides of the argument, which is why they then did get 15 out of 15. So the first thing that you write is your thesis statement. You do not give me a load of waffle about what process theodicy is and end up writing a whole page on what it is without giving any evaluation. Remember, you are being marked for your evaluation now, not your knowledge and understanding. You show that off on your 10 marker. So you've got a thesis statement, a very clear, very bold opening line. We then have our second paragraph, or our first main paragraph, shall we say, which is where you are making an argument to support your thesis statement. So they literally start by writing, in support of my thesis, Griffin's process thought fails to solve the problem of evil because he avoids Epicurus' logical problem of evil by suggesting God made the world from pre-existing matter and that is why natural disasters happen. However, the logical problem of evil argues that God cannot be omnipotent and omnibenevolent if evil exists. By suggesting that God did not fully create the world, Griffin is no longer talking about the God of classical theism because he has removed an attribute. That is very much critical analysis, isn't it? They're not just regurgitating pre-learned strengths and weaknesses of process theodicy. They're actually critically thinking about process theodicy, and they're telling the examiner not just the fact that it is wrong or it does not solve the problem, but why. And that's your critical analysis. When you show evidence, you have thought critically about the topic. Hence, his argument fails to solve the problem of evil and cannot really be called a theodicy because his response does not fit as a response to Epicurus' formulation. Now, you will notice, I hope, how linked that paragraph is to the question. You have got the first line being very clear in linking to the question, and you have got the final line being very clear in linking to the question. And I want you to really prioritize that when you're writing your 15 markers. Make sure every single paragraph is explicitly and clearly linked back to the question, because that shows that you're evaluating the statement. It shows that you're not now just regurgitating everything you know about the topic. It shows that you're closely engaging with the particular question set and that it is your mission to evaluate that statement. So their first paragraph there, really, really well written in terms of supporting their thesis statement. However, they then move on to paragraph 2, where they then do oppose their thesis statement, giving the other side of the argument and therefore ensuring that they can go higher than a level 2. So they write, on the other hand, a brilliant phrase to use. The idea of quantum mechanics supports the idea that in the subatomic reality, it is chaos, thus implying that the world was made from pre-existing matter. This does also explain why we have natural disasters due to flawed material being used by God to create the universe. Griffin argues that we have moral evil due to free will, and that although God hates evil, he is suffering along with his creation. Thus, and here's your link back to the question, Griffin's process theodicy solves the problem of evil by suggesting that it is not from God and that we should fight against it and do good things. So you can see there that their second main paragraph is opposing their thesis. And so it's giving the other side of the argument, with depth, with examples, and with detail. And so you then can feel confident, having given the other side of the argument, that you've shown diversity of viewpoints, which is what we want to see to get the top marks. So there you go. Paragraph 2 is then giving the other side of the argument, opposing the thesis. What they then do at the start of paragraph 3 is really important. They write, this argument is fatally flawed because it is unthinkable for someone to worship God who is not powerful enough to create the world or seemingly solve the problem of evil. Now, that very first bit, this argument is fatally flawed. That is the perfect example of critical analysis. Critical analysis, as I say, is all about showing you have thought critically, that you've not just memorized a list of strengths and weaknesses. It shows that you've thought critically about those strengths and weaknesses. And by writing in an essay, this argument is fatally flawed, and then saying why you think it's fatally flawed, you show critical analysis. You show that you've thought about the argument, you've weighed it up, and you've come to the conclusion it's flawed and so it's insufficient. And so not only does that show evaluation of an argument, it also demonstrates very well critical analysis, which is excellent to see. They then return to supporting their thesis statement. The paragraphs 1 and 3 have now both supported the thesis statement. And in this paragraph, they give examples again, they give detail, and then finally they write, Griffin argues that God tries to make the world as a means of attraction. However, the problem of evil contradicts that, which is why it fails to solve the problem of evil. And there's your link back to the question again, and is possibly an argument that could cause people to turn away from God. So, again, linking back to the question, excellent evaluation, excellent critical analysis. And so all that is left for them to do is write their conclusion, which should not come as a shock, because in our first paragraph, in our thesis statement, we've already been told how the essay will conclude. And so in your conclusion, what you're basically doing is bringing together everything that you've written in your essay. So in conclusion, Griffin's Process the Odyssey fails to solve the problem of evil. We're not surprised by that conclusion, are we? Because it avoids it, instead using the idea of pre-existing matter to explain the world's existence. Griffin argues that God is omnibenevolent, but by failing to fully answer if God is omnipotent, fails to give a satisfactory and I think that should say answer to Epicurus' logical problem of evil and to the evidential problem regarding the level of suffering in the world. So again, they have then picked out the key points they've made in their essay and they've reaffirmed them. They've restated them very succinctly in a conclusion, which is there to confirm the thesis. A conclusion should not be bringing in new ideas. You should not then be, writing basically another paragraph either supporting or opposing your thesis. You should simply be confirming it and bringing everything together. Your conclusion is your icing on the cake. It's your little, sprinkles on top, shall we say. It is not your time to bake a whole new cake and then start serving slices of that. It's all about bringing everything together. So it, comes to a natural, really clear conclusion. So just an overview there, you've got your thesis statement, which is one sentence to set out your stall, set out your position at the very start. We then have paragraphs 1 and paragraph 3 supporting that thesis, and then paragraph 2 opposing it. And you're using paragraph 2 as an opportunity to bring in critical analysis, because you are presenting the opposing view, but you're then thinking critically about it. You're then saying why you don't agree with that view, if that makes sense. So if I break that down into a structure, I would say your first paragraph, and I'm calling it a paragraph even though it's one sentence, should be your thesis statement, where you write one sentence setting out the conclusion. I will argue that. This essay will demonstrate that. Paragraph 1 then is where you're going to support your thesis statement. So you're going to give an argument in support of your thesis. You need to name a scholar to support your thesis as well. You might quote them. You might refer to one of their texts that supports your thesis. You're going to include an explanation and evidence, and you must then at the end of every paragraph link back to the question. So therefore, this shows why Process the Odyssey fails to solve the problem of evil, for example. Paragraph 2 then is going to be in opposition to your thesis statement. You need to give the counter argument, don't you, against your thesis. You need to name a scholar to support it. You need to include explanation and evidence, and then say why that argument is actually wrong. Then say, well, why you don't agree with that argument. Why have you not been persuaded by that argument? So that is where you get to bring in your critical analysis, by then saying why you think that argument is wrong, and that is why you don't agree with what they're saying. Paragraph 3, then you're going to return to supporting your thesis, and so you give your second argument in support of your thesis. You name a scholar to support it, you include explanation and evidence again, and then of course you must link back to the question again by saying, therefore, this again demonstrates, this conclusively shows that, and then link it back to the question. Show the examiner that you've got the question in mind at all times. And then finally, your conclusion, which, as I say, brings everything together. It's the icing on the cake, it's with the cherry on top. It's 2 or 3 sentences on how the essay has proven your thesis statement to be correct. It's reaffirming what you have written in paragraphs 1 and 3, potentially, reaffirming your criticism of what you wrote in paragraph 2 as well. But it just brings everything together and it leaves the examiner feeling confident that you've written a very well-focused response, that you've discussed different views, that you've appropriately evaluated, and that evaluation is fully supported by the reasoning, because your conclusion is where you then just succinctly summarize your reasoning for one final time. And that is it from this video. I do do hope it's been helpful. If anything has made you think, what on earth is he going on about? Please do comment down below. If you've got any suggestions for writing these essays as well, always great to hear from you. So please do let us know in the comments how you structure your 10 markers and 15 markers. And also, you know, my final advice would be to plan. Make sure you plan. I'm not saying spend half the exam planning, of course, but before you ever start writing a 10 marker or 15 marker, just have an idea of what's going to be in each paragraph. Make sure you're aware in your mind what's going to go. You know, if it's 10 marker, what are your 3 key ideas? If it's a 15 marker, what is your thesis statement? What are paragraphs 1 and 3 going to say? And how's paragraph 2 going to oppose it? And, you know, when you plan, that then translates into really well-written essays. So a couple of minutes, I would say, just planning, thinking ahead so that your structure is of an A-star standard. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck. Have a good day. And I hope to see you here very soon. Bye-bye.